Thanks, everybody, for the time today, and I want to echo Richard and Rob's sentiments yesterday. We really appreciate you guys investing time with us this week. It's really valuable to us, and I hope you get the same value. So, today's presentation is called Are We There Yet? A Roadmap to the Journey for Business Mobility. The reason why I chose that title was because every customer here, most likely, is at some point of this journey, whether they realize it or not. So, it's a unique opportunity and an incredible time in the marketplace where things are changing at such a rapid pace, and we are able to connect to our customers and our users. And this is just an awesome time, so I'm excited to talk to you about this today. So, agenda-wise, we're going to keep it fairly straight and simple. I had an entire section dedicated to math problems, but Rob Cotter stole my thunder on that yesterday. So, we're going to go right into very simple. What is it? Who is responsible for it? Why, or how do we implement it, and why? So it's pretty straightforward. About the speaker, that's me, sub 20 pounds ago. I moved to Houston. That barbecue definitely got me. Excited to hear. Previous to Red8, I was at VMware, so I designed a lot of the hybrid cloud and end-user computing infrastructure solutions over there. So super excited to get here today with you guys and talk about this. So I like to start my presentations off with either a quote or some statistics, and today we're going to start off with some statistics. Yesterday, we had some of our good friends at IDC come and talk about some of the mobile and cloud initiatives out there, and they had some very good points that I also actually had some of the same numbers. So, 1996, there were 5.7 billion people on the planet. 16 million people were connected to the internet at that point, and essentially 0.1 devices per person. So, not really anything. We would really kind of equate that to the old NT days, right? Dial-up, BBSs, things like that. There was no mobile connectivity. We get to 2015, there's 7.3 billion people on the planet. We have over 3.1 people connected to the internet, 3.1 billion people connected to the internet, and we're almost at 3 devices per person. This is what I would call the Apple or Googleification of the globe, right? Everyone has some sort of device or multiple devices and how they interact in their daily life. In 2019, we're projecting that half of the global population will be connected to the internet, and we'll be at essentially 6 devices. That's really that mantra, that idea of Internet of Things, right? Everything is going to be connected. Your daily life will be plugged in. And how do we as businesses and organizations harness that power and that connectivity to drive profitability and win in the marketplace with this idea of just global connectivity? So what is business mobility? To me, there's really 2 core tenets. There's the idea of providing secure access to applications and data that run your business on any device at any time. And that's really kind of the idea of your internal business initiatives with business mobility, right? The second piece is business mobility is really about the innovation and transforming of the way that you as your business connect to your customers. How do you go in the marketplace and innovate and win at the end of the day? So those are really the 2 main ideas today, your internal environments with your internal end users, and then your external and how you touch your customers. What this discussion is not is just a VDI discussion. That is not the case here anymore. And for a long time, that's what the discussion was really VDI. So we'll get into our first polling question right out of the gate here, which is, what are your top mobile computing concerns? And the answers would be security, meeting your customers' needs, integrating data across the enterprise, and analyzing and acting on that data. And no surprise, security jumps out to a big lead. I don't know how big that lead is, but I'm guessing double digits. And again, security, like everyone at the top of every list for every CIO on the globe right now, security is number 1 with the post-Edward Snowden world, the Sony hacks and things like that. This is top of the line initiatives, and really people are looking to integrate security at every level and at the beginning of every project. So no surprise there. Nope. Well, we're already into our second polling question. So what consideration have you given to bring your own device? This is one actually we're going to be talking a little bit in the phased approach, but essentially BYOD is really starting to take off in the organization today. We're looking at, I think CIO today said that only 44% of organizations today require their end users to use company-owned devices. So that rapid expansion of BYOD is happening, whether we're realizing it or not, and a lot of organizations are struggling or having to keep up with that. All right, so when I talk about business mobility for the end user and for workforce empowerment, this is kind of what it looks like. I like to have pictures to kind of conceptualize. So the idea of one login, one experience, any device, being able to access your applications and your data as a customer or as an end user anywhere, and being able to integrate not only your legacy applications that you're using today, but be preparing and positioning yourself for mobile applications and having a single point of contact and being able to access that from any device. And this is really what it looks like. This is VMware's Horizon Workspace. We're not really talking too much about product today, but this is just a good visual aid to kind of understand how we can deliver services to our end users and our customers in a secure way. And this is, this is definitely one of them. Uber. I feel like we should be getting some sort of commission from Uber this week because we've been talking about them nonstop. So I wanted to reference Richard's discussion yesterday. If you think about business mobility and how an organization changed the game as far as taxi services, something very simple, very basic, business mobility was the driving force, was what Uber did. They connected their customers, and they provided value to them in connecting them with a legacy service. So from extending your business to your customers and connecting, Uber is a great example. So this is an interesting piece here. So I just finished up a book. I was a little late to the party called The Phoenix Project. The Phoenix Project, how many people here have read The Phoenix Project? Good. If you haven't, take some time and do it. It's a great book from an IT perspective, and being someone that's been in that game for a long time, there was a lot of points that resonated, but a general synopsis is, essentially, it talks about a large auto manufacturer and their IT department struggling with the rapidly changing technology landscape and having to kind of take on some of the concepts around development operations or DevOps to solve some of their problems and make them more business agile so they could go out in the marketplace and win. And I think it's an excellent anecdote for business mobility because it essentially requires the same style of thought, which is when you think about VDI, right, that project for a long time, or virtual desktop infrastructure, was always kind of an IT project, and you just kind of, it got thrown on the infrastructure guys, and the desktop guys were kind of involved with it, and it had limited success unless you really drove that adoption. True business mobility today requires all hands on deck at every level, and I think it's a key point here. When you ask who's responsible for it, well, right out of the gate, you need the business to sponsor this. You need executive level sponsorship and leadership and championing this cause, because in reality, this is not an IT project. This is business transformation. Simple as that. This is changing the way that you interact with your end users and delivering operational efficiencies with your workforce, and it's changing the way that you interact with your customers and drive business and competing in the marketplace. Second, when we talk about the people from a technology level that have to be on this team, it's the application, the endpoint teams. And I really want to, one key point is mention the word endpoint, because this is no longer desktops and laptops. This is mobile devices. This is everything. So you need to have your delivery folks. You need to have your development folks on this. You need to have your desktop and endpoint technicians. The third one, and this is the one where we traditionally kind of stay in this space, is your infrastructure teams. So, and when I say data center infrastructure, I mean everyone. Networking, security. Security is a big tenet. We all know that. You have to build security into the platform day one. You cannot bolt it on and be successful. So having those folks engaged with your business mobility initiatives day one will accelerate that. And obviously your virtualization, storage, and operations teams, those go without saying. I think we all know that. The biggest one, and this is the key, is engaging your end users at the beginning. They have to be a part of it. They have to give their view of the world to validate what the IT group's vision for the solution is. And that's really important. So how do we implement it? I think there's 3 phases that I would look at. Phase 1 would be desktop transformation, mobility management. What I mean by that is your kind of original kind of idea of mobility with VDI and things like that is understanding how do I decouple the way I do business today into more of a portable environment, something that can be a little bit more efficient, a little bit more agile. And the platform folks at VMware and Microsoft are really working hard. So here at Red8, we sent a large contingent to San Francisco last week for VMworld. And there was an awesome keynote with Pat and some of the senior leadership at Microsoft, which traditionally you think VMware and Microsoft, and I mean, they don't cooperate very well. But they actually came on stage at the keynote and talked about Windows 10 deployment and how VMware and Microsoft are going to partner to deliver that at a very high level in a very simplified, streamlined manner in their business mobility initiatives through the acquisition of AirWatch. So AirWatch being the mobile device management company that VMware acquired a few years back, one of their largest acquisitions ever. They're really looking to now deliver that next generation application image management system. So that's really phase one, is really focusing on that transformation at a core infrastructure level. Now phase two is the BYOD and mobile application integration. That's where that last polling question was supposed to be. But essentially, after you've decoupled and you've now been able to streamline the delivery of applications and images to your end users on any device, now you look at how do I implement kind of the next-gen mobile applications, right? Companies like Office 365, Salesforce, and Box, right? How do I drive cloud-integrated applications so that I can now enable my workforce to even be decoupled further from the data center and from the office? And we'll touch on a lot of that in a second. In phase three, this is the biggest one. Once you've now implemented mobile applications, once you've decoupled from the data center with your legacy infrastructure and applications, you now have the ability to really innovate and imagine how you can change your business with this. So the idea of mobile-enabled workflows. A little bit of a story. So when I was visiting Houston before I relocated last year, we were out with a customer for dinner, and I had my laptop in my rental car. It was a minivan. And my entire car got broken into, all of my gear stolen, right? I was on day 2 of a 10-day business trip. So I was in trouble. I had nothing, and I had to get on a plane to New York right after that and continue to take sales calls. Because we at Red8 have enabled or embraced this mobility initiative and this idea of decoupling from the data center and being agile, I was able to walk into the next day to the Apple store and get the new iPhone 6. I'm just kidding, it's too big. I was able to get this tablet, and within 3 hours, I had everything that I needed from an application perspective, all of my data, and I was able to then go on and continue my trip without any continuity issues. And that was essentially the vision of what we were trying to do. Bring your own device, cloud applications, secure data connectivity, and really be able to be truly mobile. And as a salesperson, we are the kind of the pinnacle of mobility. I mean, working out of an office is like a luxury for us. 9 times out of 10, most of us are taking meetings in cars. So being able to really decouple away from that and really innovate on how we deliver is huge in that respect. So, you know, that's really where mobile-enabled workflows is. That's that next step. That's where you really kind of take it to the next level with integrating how you innovate with the business. So, polling question: what do you view as obstacles to your mobile strategy? Oh, Scott. And the options here we go: security, costs. It's a horse race. I like to see cost isn't number one because people immediately go to cost. And that's a kind of a misnomer about mobility initiatives, especially back in the VDI days, is cost. If you're looking to do VDI for cost savings, that's not where you start. It's about operational efficiencies and long-term cost savings, but if you start out with my desktop is cheaper by this factor, then you're not seeing the point of doing this, which is really about security, compliance, and agility. So that's great to see that security is top of the heap on that. And kind of back to our original thought here, when you're going down this process with business mobility, it's key to have security engaged at day one. Your security groups, your security partners, everyone needs to be there architecting that so that you don't end up with a scenario where you paint yourself in a corner technology-wise and you end up having to kind of bolt on products after the fact. So the million-dollar question, why does it matter, right? From an internal perspective, you want to empower your end users, right? You drive productivity and efficiency in the workforce. By being able to decouple your users from the data center, from the office, you get maximum efficiencies, right? You're more agile for your workforce. And obviously at different levels for what your different employees do, but it's massively important for them to be as efficient as possible and to get massive productivity gains out of enabling this type of mobile workforce is huge. I can say for us, our guys are connected 24 hours a day, and this is way beyond what we were doing years ago with the ability to use these cloud technologies. So from a business perspective, it's about connecting to your customers. It's about agility. It's about getting, finding new ways to innovate and bring your customers closer to and improve their experience. Whether you're in retail and you now, in the past, your workers in a retail store were tethered to a cash register. Now, with iPads, they can go around the store and interact with customers and check inventory and show them other options, right? Things like that were enabled because of the mobility initiatives and being able to really disconnect from traditional workstations and things like that. And finally, a quote that you see a lot here at Red8, speed wins, right? If you've ever seen the movie Any Given Sunday with Al Pacino, he always talks about, and the NFL, especially since we're starting the season, it's a game of inches. Well, business is a game of seconds, and I would argue today, business is a game of milliseconds. So anytime you can enable your workforce to be more agile or bring a product to market faster, it matters in the industry and it matters in the workplace. So that is really the key tenet here, and really a kind of a core discussion that we have with our customers is speed and how you can enable yourself and differentiate yourself in the marketplace in that respect. So finally, I end with a quote. So as an ex-VMware, I always am looking to give my people over there some love. So this was from Sanjay, who runs the end-user computing practice at VMware right before VMworld. And basically, business mobility will be a key driver of economic value for the next decade, truly reorienting the businesses around mobile innovation, apps, and services. And that's a really key point, is innovation. These tools by themselves will not change your business, but what it will do is give you as business leaders the ability to innovate. And I think that is a huge advantage going forward. So Q&A, I always like to do a little call to action when I speak with everybody. So number one, reach out to your Red8 account teams. We've made a massive investment in our mobility practice, and we have a lot of really sharp people here to help you analyze and make decisions in that respect. So we talk about market reviews on solutions from our partners to help enable you, right? So let's get in, let's talk about where you are today and where you want to be, and we can then work on what the solution design the solution that you need. The second is we've made some investments in some types of assessments to help you understand what your environment looks like and where you want to go. So whether that's mobility readiness assessments and actually looking at your environment and looking at what solutions would actually be appropriate for how you would deliver those applications and data, as well as cloud readiness assessments, which is another key component of this business mobility initiative, which is how many of my services can I move to the cloud? So we do assessments where we can actually look at your environment and your applications and say, this is good for the cloud and this is the appropriate cloud for it to use. Finally, this is my favorite part of Real Cloud Summit, is the peer-to-peer interaction. And I think a lot of you would agree, you get the most value when you can talk about some of these business challenges and problems with your peers here at the summit. A lot of people have gone down this road, and a lot of people are in the middle of it, and it's just getting together and talking about it is huge. So that's all I have. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it.
Todd Gaske. Todd. All right, we'll take a few questions from the audience, if you don't mind.
You got it.
All right, who's got a few questions here for Todd? Bum, 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 looking through. Oh, there's a hand waving. Give me a second to get back there to you, sir. And when I'm coming back there, you guys can start thinking of a question or two. Todd's a little early, so we have a few questions we can take.
Yeah, Todd, my experience specifically implementing BYOD, the idea was great, let the users bring their own device and so on. But as soon as we decided to implement an NDM to manage the devices, then everybody said, no way, you're going to install my stuff. So initially, it's going to cost money because now we had to basically buy a lot of devices and so on for the workforce, and we were counting on using their devices. So
right.
Initially was an outcome, but overall was a good thing for the business.
Absolutely. So I appreciate the comments on that, and I think what we've seen too is, again, with initiatives like this, it's about timing and maturity in the space, right? So you look at the MDM space operated fairly independently from the virtual desktop and application delivery side, and now as companies start to align and integrate together, you're seeing more mature product delivery solutions so that when you start out on your initiatives now, you can lay the framework and the guidelines on what your BYO initiatives look like, right? So whether that's stipends for bringing your own gear in, and knowing that, okay, if you're going to bring this in, you're going to have this requirement to have a segregated kind kind of a segregated application environment on your device. And I think that was the biggest challenge early on with BYOD, was that there was no kind of segregation, right? You kind of either took the device over and owned it, or it was the Wild West. And now a lot of technology maturity has allowed you to kind of, almost like a virtualization, where you would actually isolate an area off, have your corporate application sit on that portion of the platform, and everything else would exist as a normal kind of personal device. And you would have the ability to remote wipe and require certain security components to connect to certain applications. So as that product set matures, those type of problems get solved. But I'm glad that you were able to fight through it and move forward with it, because I think one of the biggest things here, especially with mobility, and this goes back to the VDI days, is when you start these initiatives, you want to start small and get wins so that you can continue to kind of foster the growth of that initiative. But it doesn't mean you can't dream big, right? You want to definitely look to kind of go after the bigger use cases, but you want to kind of get some momentum first so that you don't let those initiatives kind of die on the vine as you're starting kind of figuring it out. So,
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Yes. Oh, I'll get you. Tiffany's got a question.
Brian, you got swiped.
So security was brought up multiple times as, a challenge in moving towards a transformative mobility strategy, as well as one of the roadblocks. So how have you navigated that conversation with our customers and get past that?
So again, I think product maturity is another point where this has really started to become less of an issue as these tools mature in the marketplace. So for example, you have the ability now with some of the integrations in the MDM suites to allow certain connectivity to applications internally versus externally. So let's say I'm a user, and when I'm on the network, I can have full access to applications and data. But when I'm not on the corporate network, suddenly I have a limited set. So controlling that is one area where security would play. The other piece is obviously the maturity with some of our partners like Palo Alto Networks, integration with our partners with VMware, and how you would deliver your workspace with things like two-factor authentication, right? So all of those areas where they were when the products were fairly immature, they've now kind of been uplifted, and security is at every level now. So whether it's physical security, access to applications and data and controlling it and where you can have access to it, and generally just the ability to kind of control the device outside of the corporate network. Brian, I know you got something for me.
No, I'm good. Now, what role did you play specifically in the salacious acts of the raffle giveaway last night, and as it pertains to Texas? And how would you like to respond to those accusations?
Let's just say that the Texas ballots they were chilled, so we could tell they were cold. I actually was not. I was not around at the giveaway portion, so I have complete plausible deniability.
I will say Todd pays the best money for any drawings. I have found out that last night. So,
I've got a trunk full of drones right now.
Yeah.
I want them.
Is there any other questions for Todd before we wrap him up? Oh, excellent.
So what advice, one of the problems we have in terms of going mobile with some of our things is that our legacy apps really weren't designed with touch in mind for tablets and phones and those kinds of things. Any advice for companies that are in that situation?
So I think kind of what we talked about earlier, which is going after the use cases first. Now, not everything is going to be portable to the tablet and touch level, right? But I think there's enough tools in the tool belt now to solve those problems, whether it's, and I think if we went back with one of the slides with that portal, right, you have your legacy apps that would traditionally work better with things like Citrix, right, or RDSH. Those are areas where you still would have some degree of, you would need a little bit of an interaction. But the third phase and the second phase really is more of moving past the legacy portability into actual application integration and the next platform, right? So looking at, okay, this is where we are today. I don't want it to hold up our progress for an application, but I want to make sure that I have a roadmap to move to something that's going to be, a little bit more useful in more of a tablet and touch phase. So there are tools out there that will help with that. But again, like if you want to do remote desktop and you're doing server administration on a 6-inch iPhone or whatever, then yeah, that's probably not a great use case. But with that same platform, you would have access to being able to launch collaboration tools and communication tools and things like that on the fly and really be able to be a little bit more agile in that respect. Anything else? All right. If you're on the golf course tomorrow, watch out for me. I'm going to be hitting balls.
All right, Todd Gaske. Todd, you're awesome. Todd.